Hi, I'm Dr. Safaya, a medical doctor who doubles as an email marketing expert. In here, I take you behind the scenes of failed and successful email marketing campaigns. You get to see what these amazing individuals have tried that worked and didn't work in email marketing. If you've been curious and like me, you want to know what other people out there are really doing in email marketing, then join me as I go behind the scenes. Okay, we're good. All right, so I have with me today the amazing Jenn, who is a sustainable marketing strategist. And one thing I found very intriguing is how she helps you get visibility through public speaking and equips digital business owners to create sustainable, stressless marketing systems that grow their business. And I feel like the biggest part of it is that you don't have to depend on social media with what she shows you. All you have to do is create a stressless, emphasis on stressless, visibility ecosystem for your brand. And today she's with me here on this podcast, and we're going to be looking at the behind the scenes of her launch campaign from pre-work to results. But before we go into that, Jen, I'd like to just ask you, first of all, welcome on board. And when you say sustainable marketing strategies, what exactly do you mean?
Yeah, so I have found that for a lot of folks, marketing their business becomes unsustainable when they're trying to keep up with the social media algorithms, when they feel like they have to write a million emails, and this taking down this huge checklist of all the things that we're supposed to do as marketers for our own businesses. And so what I teach my clients to do is create an ecosystem around their speaking and collaborations. So every time you're on a podcast like this, or you're speaking at a summit, or you're going into somebody else's program and teaching in there, you can take those speaking and collaboration opportunities and turn them into marketing assets. So that way you're still marketing your business, but you're doing it in a way that you don't have to be constantly active, constantly churning that hamster wheel, and you can actually have fun with it and not burn yourself out. So that's what I mean by sustainable.
I love that idea because social media can be a lot sometimes, especially when your schedule outside of social media gets busy. So having something that is sustainable, I feel like that should be the end goal for every business owner. Now, before we go in, you've been doing this since 2015 and you have done both podcast and summit. So my question to you today is podcast or summit? Because I mean, if you had to choose one, which would it be and why?
That is a great question. I don't think anybody's asked me that before. So I honestly would actually say both, but that is because they are very different. So I always start my clients with a podcast tour. We go and we curate 20 to 30 podcasts and start sending out those pitches. And the reason I start there is because it's proactive. So you can go and pitch podcasts. They are evergreen, like they're not doing like one summit a year or something like that. So you know that they're either accepting guests or not, and you can do that proactively. Those are going to be a slower trickle of leads and sales and connections and that kind of thing, versus when you're doing a virtual summit, whether you're speaking or actually hosting it, then you are actually going and getting an influx of people into your email market or your email list or your sphere of influence, I guess you could say, and you're making more connections in one fell swoop rather than trying to go and do it all at once. So they really work in tandem really nicely together. So it's not really one or the other. It's where are you in your journey with speaking and marketing and that kind of thing, and which one do you want? Do you want long-term sustainable growth through podcasts, or are you like, no, I really need to grow my email list right now because I've got a launch coming up, or I want an influx of people to be able to speak to and get more market research going. So it's just where are you at and what's most important to you right this second.
All right, because I did not see that answer coming. I was almost sure you would take podcast, but now that you put it based on where you're at, I really like that train of thought. We're going to start with, what you did all the way to the results you got. And every day, someone somewhere is doing a launch, and we have so many diverse ways of launching. And from each launch, we learn something. And so today we're going to be learning from Jen's launch. So Jen, want to tell us about what it is that you launched back then, how it is you wanted to go about it?
Yeah, at that point, this was back in 20, I just had to double check my dates. It was January of 2023, and I was speaking to a group, like a segment of my list who were summit hosts or aspiring summit hosts. And these are folks who were running the summit themselves rather than just speaking on them. And a lot of the time, those folks put 3 to 6 months worth of work into their summit, and then it just sits on a shelf. So what I do with mine is I evergreen them. I turn them into an ongoing lead magnet and low ticket sales. And people kept asking me about that. So I put together some packages around it and decided to do a virtual retreat to help people evergreen their summits in a weekend. So that was what this campaign that we're going to talk about was going through, is like how to evergreen your summit and that kind of thing, trying to get people into that evergreen summit retreat. So it's not what I do at the moment necessarily. Like I still do that. It's just kind of a back end off, but it was a chunk of what I was doing at that point. It was a very interesting experiment.
So was that the first time you were, launching it in that particular way based on the request that you got?
Yeah, it was the first time launching this type of offer, and I was trying a little bit of a different approach than I had necessarily in the past. I was trying a little bit more of the pre-launch warm-up in a shorter launch window and that type of thing. And so yeah, it was just an experiment.
Okay, let's get right into this campaign, right? Because I see you have this new offer and you want to go ahead and launch your offer. So first things first that I wanted to ask is before you launched your offer, were there certain things that you went ahead to do or to put in place? And what were your projections when you were planning out this offer?
Yeah, so I set up all the back end stuff. What I was doing for the framework of what we were going to work through was just taking my IP day frameworks that I already had in place and turning it into a 2 day retreat instead. So that part was pretty easy. And then mostly most of my prep honestly was just writing the emails and figuring out what that's going to look like and just seeing where stuff went.
Okay, that's great. It was email only. So let's go into the strategy. Usually, when people do like launches, I for one personally, like when I do for myself, for my clients, I have at least like three phases of the launch. So I would usually have like the pre-launch, then the launch, and then the post-launch. So I don't know if you had like similar phases for your launch and what the timelines for these particular campaigns were.
Yeah, so it ended up being it was 20 days. And so for about 9 of those days, I was doing one email a day as kind of a warm up, like figure out who's interested, who's clicking on links, and ramping it up after that to doing multiple emails per day and things like that. So I had kind of a pre launch. Let me look at my list of emails and see. Part of my problem was I wasn't emailing people as regularly as I should have been at that point. And so it was a little bit of a cold launch. And that is one of those things I would definitely not recommend, is going from not emailing your people regularly enough to going and then jumping in with stuff. So like I was emailing them pretty regularly for probably about 2 months leading up to that. But I don't feel like that's quite enough to get a good pre-launch going and everything. And I was talking to them about doing like evergreening their summit and things like that beforehand, and I had people asking about it. But there are definitely things that could have been better in the pre-launch, and that is something that I feel like is so important.
Okay. So you had like a total of 20 days. You started out with one email a day, graduated to two. At what point did you graduate to two? Was it like 1 week in, 10 days in?
So for that, I had 9 days, 9 weekdays. So at the beginning of it, I was sending one per weekday for about 2 weeks. So it was 9 days total. And then on the Friday of the second week, I moved it up to two a day, including the weekends, for 5 days. And then I went up to 3 or 4 emails for the next 5 or 6 days to end. I don't know if it was too much. I don't feel like it was, because my open rates and everything didn't particularly drop, but it was definitely more than I would usually email, and but people were really liking the email, so that helped.
That's great. That's great. Because a lot of times people are like, oh, how many emails is too much? But part of what I've seen with that is the kind of relationship you've built with your audience plays a part, and the content of those emails, because I've seen somebody send way over 3 emails a day during a lunch period. And I know that I didn't unsubscribe, and a number of people, I mean, he was giving us feedback of the replies people were giving him for his launch, that kind of thing. So those things are factors that really play into, come into play. For this campaign that went, over 20 days and was broken into these categories, was there anything particularly you were doing when you were sending those emails, right? And then what were the metrics you were tracking since it was an email only campaign?
Yeah, so in the emails, I was highlighting unique approaches that I have because not many people are talking about evergreening virtual summits. So I was talking about some of that stuff as thought leadership. I was addressing objections, um, and then what was I usually had three, and now I'm blanking on the third one, but it was stuff like that. So like, what's inside the course? Why is this different from other things that you've done? And what are some of the things that people might be asking questions about or saying, well, I can't because like my summit failed. It was a flop. Nobody showed up the way I wanted them to. It was a failure. I shouldn't evergreen it. So like stuff like that was what I was sending emails on. And then just giving them details about the program. And then, metrics. I try not to focus too heavily on metrics, especially because in the past year or two, they've become unreliable, especially with all the Apple updates. So, like, open rates, click rates are not always accurate and that kind of thing. But I did track the open rates, the click through rates, and the unsubscribes. The unsubscribes, not because I cared so much, because if people didn't want to hear about what I was offering, why are they on my email list? But it was helpful knowing, okay, sending 4 emails a day, which was what I was sending at the end, people don't unsubscribe any more than they do when I'm sending 1 email a week or 1 email a day. So it was open rates, click throughs, and unsubscribes that were just kind of giving me some benchmark metric.
Okay. So before we go into the results, I'm curious. You were sending thought leadership, objection handling, and all of those kind of emails. Did you notice that any particular one performed better than the other?
That is a good question too. Let me look at my metrics. They all got relatively similar open rates. It hovered between like 35 and 40%. My average overall was 38.8% open rates. Let's see if any of them really jumped above 40. From what I'm seeing in my metrics, they were all similar in terms of open rates, and there were some that got more clicks, but not like significantly. It was like 0.3% higher click through rate, which I guess in click throughs is not insignificant, but none of them were like, oh my gosh, this one really did it.
All right, so that's great. So now let's go into the results of what it is that we, found out. We've looked at this campaign, the timeline, 20 days. I'm trying to think of if I've done a campaign for like 20 days before. And it was 20 weekdays initially. I really found that pretty interesting. I was going to ask before I forget. Was there a reason why you were particular about weekdays initially before you went back to before you now doubled down towards the end? So I know that towards the end there's like scarcity, urgency, because it's coming to an end and things like that. So you want to increase. But was there a reason why you had weekdays only in the initial part of the campaign?
Not particularly. It's mainly for me. I try as much as possible to kind of take the weekends off. And so I try to model that for my audience for the most part too. Like during launches is a little bit different just because, like you said, that urgency and that kind of thing. But mostly it's just that I like to take weekends off as much as I can. Like I've got sewing Sabbaths on Sundays and just doing that for my audience too, so they don't, even if they might be checking their inbox anyway, that way they don't end up with a pile of emails on a Monday as well.
I really like how you're personalizing your email marketing to your personal style, right? It's really great to see because you don't see it so often. So let's get into the results of this campaign that was pulling in 30 to 40% open rate and getting people to click. what were the results in terms of enrollment for the program?
So that is where everything fell apart. Is I think I technically had one person enroll at the very 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 last minute, which isn't really enough to do a retreat because that's just one on one. So that was what we ended up doing, was one on one. I ended up pivoting it after the retreat. The cart closed, and I took the click rates and like I lead scored them essentially. So like these people were opening most of the emails, they were clicking most of the emails, they were clearly interested, but maybe the price point was too high, or they were like, I don't really need the one-on-one support and stuff like that. And so what I did then was I went and did personal outreach and said, hey, the next thing I'm going to be launching is a DIY course version of this framework. Is that something that would be more aligned with what you're looking for? And so that I ended up having 3 people enroll. But this is in terms of getting sales, the campaign was a bit of a flop.
Yeah, I mean, all of that hard work and only 3 sales, especially when you had like a target that was way higher, it can be pretty devastating because I mean that's a lot of copyright there and a lot of time and energy that went into it. So in doing the audit that you talked about as well as the lead scoring, were you able to identify what the problem was? Or did you find out anything? I like the fact that you actually went to ask your audience, to find out based on the offer. So I see that you tried to do an audit on the offer if that's where the problem was. But did you find out particularly where it is you went wrong or anything interesting from the audience?
Yeah, so I did find out a couple of things between doing that outreach and then going and doing the course and getting their feedback on that. So some of the feedback was just I spent my budget in Black Friday and I'm not like gonna have an envelope of money to invest kind of thing till like March or June or whatever it happens to be. So a lot of folks just felt like they weren't ready to spend, like make that kind of investment was required for that kind of one-on-one virtual retreat kind of thing. So that was where the course ended up being a good fit. But then when I went and did the course, honestly, one of my biggest takeaways is I was sharing a lot of my like IP, my intellectual property that is my special sauce, I guess you could say, for what I teach in the course and in my Evergreen Summit intensives and that kind of thing. And I put too much of that into the emails. And so people were kind of feeling like, yeah, no, I have what I need to be able to evergreen my summit. Maybe it's not everything, but it's close enough and I can just go and do this myself. So that was one of the biggest takeaways that I think I had from that email series is being careful with how I present what I'm teaching and making sure that it's not everything. Like I'm all for giving away a ton of value, making sure that people leave being able to take action. But it's when they feel like they don't need to get more and they can just run with what you've already given them that you end up with this kind of launch where they're like, yeah, I got what I need. I don't need to join the retreat or buy the course or what have you. So I've worked more lately, like in the past year since that happened, to, well, I guess 2 years now. I've lost track of time clearly, but worked on making sure it's more mindset shifts and that type of thing and helping people understand why this is important rather than how to do it.
Okay, so I think that that's like a serious thing right there. The fact that you're oversharing, and then the next thing is people feel like they have gotten everything that you have promised. And a lot of times people are always looking for free things. So if they don't see a reason to buy or they feel like they can achieve what it is you are promising just by reading what it is in your email, the next question is, so what am I paying for? And I think that that's a mistake that anybody can make, especially when we want to be able to give away, a ton of value and show these people that we know what it is that we say, what it is that we do. But I like the fact that you changed it into more of a belief shifting and, mindset change. It's an ever so subtle change, but I'm sure that the results were, measurable and all of that. And I really like that angle and how it is that you brought it up. So now I'm wondering, looking back, right, in terms of this belief shifting and mindset changing, you have been doing this now for like the next launches or other launches that you have done, if I'm correct. So how has that played out for you now?
Yeah, so my latest, I guess you call it a soft launch, I guess, for our No Fuss podcast tour offer. I wanted to kind of get people warmed up and help them understand why guest podcasting is so powerful and that kind of thing, because that's our current main offer focus. So I decided to do a 30-day email series, like not a launch technically, just like every weekday send an email, except Christmas. I didn't send one on Christmas, but go and give them a really short, quick read about like why podcasting as a guest and how they can make that happen. Just like a quick, short, snappy tip to take action on. And that has been huge because I go and I do the mindset shift at the beginning and give them just enough to take some action, but not everything that we teach or do for our clients. And that has made more sales in the past month than that actual launch that I did back in January 2023. So if that says anything, it's definitely working.
Definitely. So will you say now, will you say you've discovered like a new framework that you're going to use for your launches?
Yeah. So essentially moving forward, like I'm I'm still going to be, when I launch, we'll still share about like the objections and any myths or mindset shifts and like details about the offer. I'm just not going to give so much of the how to do this and that type of thing as I did in that old launch.
I'm beginning to think about like the emails I sent recently for a launch, and I'm auditing it in my head, like a how to, or if it's like mindset change. And I really like this shift from value and telling them how to do it all the way to actually doing a shift and then getting increased sales, because at the end of the day you're doing a launch, you want to be able to, that's like one of the key metrics that we are looking at there. So at the oh yeah, before we wrap up, so Jen mentioned something and I want to throw more light because it was one of the first things that I discovered. So I connected with Jen on Thread, and then I heard her talking about doing a podcast for. So she talked about her recent launch for her no post podcast, and basically what she's doing is helping you get like 20 to 30, right? If I'm not mistaken, 20 to 30, I think podcast guest opportunities for yourself. And that is a visibility strategy of steroids, because imagine tapping into 20 to 30 other audiences outside of your audience, and you don't have to do the background work, you don't have to find them, you don't have to write the pitch emails, you don't have to bother about the topic, because she's doing all of that for you. In short, just so you know, Jen is giving us a freebie, an interview question generator that can even help you come up with questions for free for a guest that or somebody you want to have on your podcast that you want to teach and all of that. Right? So her interview generator, question generator does all of that for you. Now, if you don't want that, you can just go ahead and have them do everything A to Z and get 20 to 30 podcasts that you can be on and increase your visibility without stress, because you're going to be tapping into 20 to 30 different audience. And when I saw it, I found it super amazing because I don't think people do that. And I've seen a lot of people tap into podcasting and the results that they get with visibility, which is one of the major reasons why people even podcast in the first place. So if that's right up your alley, you want to go over to the show notes and check out the freebies as well as the offers, everything will be linked there. And if you want to connect with Jen on Thread, which is where I connected with her first, or Instagram, all her links are there. But you should know that you should be looking for visibility ecosystem, because that's our handle across social media. Now, before we wrap up, Jen, how can we implement what it is you have shared? You've told us what you did differently and what you're going to keep doing differently. But if you are, going to advise somebody based on your previous experience from 2023 and the results you've gotten now, what's one piece of advice you're going to be telling to that person in terms of what we can do differently?
I think it would be generous with what you are sharing, but not so generous that, people get everything they need. So kind of the line that I have found is taking them right up to where it'd be like, this is exactly how I write a podcast pitch email for my clients. For example, what I would tell them instead is you should include 2 to 3 sample questions to make it easy for the host to say yes, because then they're going to be able to go and take those. They know that maybe you have more. It gives them a starting point, and it shows them how you're unique. And you can use the interview questions generator for that kind of thing, versus this is exactly how I work it into my podcast pitch email, and here's the template and that kind of thing. I save that for my paid students, my paid clients. So if you find that line for yourself between, okay, this is giving enough value that they get some action out of it, they get some results, but not so much that they don't need to work with me, I think that is really the key. So that you're giving away enough that you're cementing yourself in their mind as the expert, as a person who knows what they're talking about and who can actually help them. That's the big key. You got to give them something to take action on to get an actual result from. And then when they want more, that's when they come back.
All right, I really like that. So now we're going to just do a set of rapid fire questions. And don't worry, it's going to be pretty interesting. It's still in line with this or that. So my first question is long launches or short launches? You've done 20 days, you've done 30 days. So what are people who do launches that are in the line of like 3 months, when they do those super big launches that they start really early? What are your thoughts between long or short launch?
I would do a short launch with a runway. So like the 30-day email series that I've been doing, that's kind of my runway to when I would actually do a launch of like, hey, now we're going to actually get into all of the details of the offer and the objections that you may have and stuff like that. That was not something that I addressed in that 30-day series. So I would consider that a runway, and then maybe I would do like a 7-day, hey, here's the actual offer and that kind of thing. But I also always try to make sure that I'm not blindsiding them with the price, because that is one I really hate, is when someone's like, we're doing a launch for 7 days and you're going to have no clue how much the offer actually is until you have a very limited time window to get it, and now you have to make a split-second decision with a lot of money. So that would be my caveat on short launches.
All right. So you advocate for bringing the price up really early, really early on.
Or at least like even just PS line in it, somewhere that I can find it in the email is really all I'm asking for. Especially if it's anything above like $500 to $1,000, a 4-figure price tag, you need to know what that is long enough before the launch comes that you're not sitting there going, oh no, where do I find $2,500?
Yeah, definitely. So now my second question would be seasonal launches or evergreen. Seasonal in terms of like Black Friday, because you mentioned that one of the things you found out was that some people said that, oh, they just spent all their money on Black Friday and they didn't have like an envelope of money to bring in for this particular offer right now. So what are your thoughts on seasonal launch seasonal offers, so the Mother's Day, the Black Friday, and all of that, or evergreen launches that are running all year round?
Actually advocate for kind of the same way with podcasts and summits, where for different reasons and in different ways. So I prefer to have things available on evergreen so that people like me who are like, I want to take action right now, can get into the program and that kind of thing. Whether it's through open doors or through like a secret 7 days, you can get access after you sign up for this freebie kind of thing. But letting those people get in right away, and then having lead generation events. So for me, it's like in 2025, it's going to be quarterly summits. So like audio summits, Q1, Q3, Q4, and then a big full video summit in Q2. Things like that, where you're bringing in a big group of people without having to make it necessarily all about the launch, but still letting people get in throughout the rest of the year, so that you're not losing people who are like, I'm going to take action now and go find somebody else when that's not available.
I smell a strategy because you talked about a secret back door. And I know that a lot of people do it, just that that's not the focus for today. So I don't want to, pull you there. But I really like the idea of a freebie to a secret back door that allows you pulling people even when you are not actively launching. And I'm highlighting it in case people missed it, just so that they know that, that is something actually happens. And I like the idea about summits because I was looking through the summit that you're launching, February 2025, and I was looking at the lineup of topics: the magnetic content strategy, role of networking in building long-term visibility, overcoming the fear of being seen, and things like that. And I'm pretty excited for this audio summit that you are planning. So I was going to ask, when are we expecting the doors for that summit to bounce open, because it's a lot of things that we need in 2025.
So that will be running for the last week of February is my tentative penciled in date right now. And yeah, I'm really excited for that because I got so much response on my speaker threads for that. So yeah, I'm going to be contacting the speakers probably this week and just locking that in and getting them all the details. So doors will probably open a week to 2 weeks before that, so like middle of February of 2025, and then probably have that available as kind of a quiet little lead magnet after that, so that people can still sneak in and get access after it's over. But
I like the idea of people sneaking in. I think I'm going to have to write that down somewhere. People sneaking in. It's a great email marketing strategy because they get to feel special and all of that. And funny enough, I just reached out to somebody to collaborate with what I would now, in short, it's a new framework, call it sneaking offer. So what I plan to do is have her promote a webinar I did before, right? And then it's going to come in terms of um we are opening special access to this particular community for this number of days to get in and watch the webinar for free, that kind of thing. And the webinar is not available anywhere really. Even the people who signed up for the webinar back then aren't going to get access to it because their timeline has expired, that kind of thing. So I really like that idea. And I think it's something that people should do in email marketing, repurposing content, repurposing classes, videos time to time, and just creating an offer that really aligns with people in terms of the messaging so that they get to feel special, you get to get your results, and it's all sleaze free, right? So nobody feels like you're deceiving them or all of this. You're actually doing something for them that is mutually beneficial to both you and the audience. And Jen, at this junction, it has been amazing having you here. And before we wrap up, I just want to give you the opportunity if you have any final words for us or any particular thing you want to tell us about in terms of visibility ecosystem and what you do.
yeah, so I think I'll just reiterate: be generous, but don't give too much away. And something I always tell my clients is think about what your audience wants, like what they think they need, even if you know that what they actually need is something different. So that is kind of a mindset shift I always have to work on with my clients, because they want to give them, like, I know that you need to improve your business etiquette so you can handle sticky client situations. And like, that's one of my actual clients who I had to work with. And we had to go and say, okay, you know that they need business etiquette, but what they want to know is, how do I deepen the relationships that I have in my network so that they actually bring in revenue? How do I handle situations with clients that get kind of out of hand, or where I'm really scared to send that email, and things like that? So thinking about what the audience wants, and then showing them how what they want correlates with what you know that they need. And so that's that mindset shift piece that you can work into your email marketing. And if you're going on guest podcasts, all that stuff, wherever you're doing your marketing, try and weave that in.
Definitely. I love it. I feel like I could go on and on with questions because the more I hear you say things, the more interesting it becomes, and especially with how the things are so salient points, but really, really powerful. I think that's what I've loved the most about this episode. They are so little changes, but super powerful. but we would call it a day. We would stop here. And I'm super grateful and I'm excited for this. And I look forward to having, us do more together in the future. Thank you so much for doing this with me and for sharing with us on email marketing experiments. I believe that not just me, but everybody here has picked up the key thing you said, to be generous, but not so generous, so that we go ahead to do mindset shifts and do change, shift beliefs to be able to increase our revenue from email marketing. Have a great rest.